My name is Maria Alvarez. I am 62 years old, and I live alone in a small stone cottage overlooking the cold waters of northern Spain. If you stood outside my window at dawn, you'd hear the sea breathing, soft and endless. But inside these walls, there's only silence. Once, this house was full of life. I was born here, married here, and raised my only son here. Now it's just me, and the memories that refuse to fade. My husband, Antonio, passed away 10 years ago. He built this house with his own hands. Sometimes, I still talk to him when I water the flowers he planted. The air smells of salt, and every corner still whispers his name. My son, Luis, left for Australia when he turned 20. He wanted to study engineering, a dream bigger than this small coastal town could offer. At first, he called every week, then once a month, and eventually, not at all. His last postcard still sits on my fridge, a picture of the Sydney Opera House with a note that says, "Don't worry, Mama. I'll come home soon." That was 12 years ago. Every morning I check my phone, hoping for a message, a photo, a sign that I still matter to him. But the screen stays empty, and so does my heart. Until one quiet afternoon, there was a knock at my door. No one ever knocks anymore. When I opened it, I froze. It was Luis. He looked older, thinner, tired. But to me, he was still my little boy. I pulled him into my arms and cried without shame. He said life had been hard. Too much work, too much pressure. He missed me, he said. And for the first time in years, I believed him. He stayed for a few days. We talked about the past, drank tea, and I dared to hope again. Then one evening, he looked at me and said, "Mama, come with me. Come to Australia. You shouldn't live here alone anymore." My heart jumped. To be near him again, to meet his children, to belong somewhere. It sounded like a dream. He said he would take care of everything, sell the house, arrange the documents, buy the tickets. I only needed to pack a few things. So I did. I gave away my furniture, donated clothes to the church, and kept one suitcase. Just enough for a new beginning. The house sold quickly. Luis said the money would go into his account to handle the travel and help me settle once we arrived. It all happened so fast. Too fast. When we reached the airport, I felt nervous and small. He told me to sit down while he went to get a wheelchair. "5 minutes, Mama," he said with a smile. I waited. 5 minutes turned to 10, then 20, then 40. He never came back. A police officer noticed me sitting alone. When I showed him my son's picture and flight ticket, he looked down and whispered gently, "Señora." He boarded the plane, alone. I couldn't speak. I couldn't cry. I just held Antonio's old scarf against my chest. My son had left me behind. He took everything. The house, the money, my trust, and disappeared into the sky. The officer's name was Diego. He didn't leave me there. He took me home to his wife, Clara, who welcomed me like family. She made me tea, gave me a blanket, and said softly, "You are safe now." For the first time in years, someone meant it. Days passed. I stayed in their guest room, too broken to think about the future. Then one night I overheard Diego on the phone. His voice was quiet, heavy. A flight from Madrid to Sydney, the same one Luis took, had crashed. No survivors. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just sat there, tears falling silently as the truth sank in. My son, the boy I had loved more than life itself, had betrayed me, and then been taken by fate before he could ever say sorry. That night I whispered into the dark, "I forgive you, Luis, and I hope you find peace." In time I began to heal, not because I forgot, but because Diego and Clara helped me remember what kindness felt like. They became the family I had lost. Clara taught me how to bake again. Diego brought me books, flowers, and small reasons to smile. Together we built a quiet, gentle life. Days passed slowly, like the sea outside my window, calm but full of hidden stories. Every morning, Diego would bring me fresh bread from the bakery. He'd always say, "Warm bread for a warm heart, Doña Maria." And I would smile. A real smile. The kind I hadn't worn in years. Clara and I spent our afternoons in the garden, her laughter filling the air like chimes. We planted jasmine by the fence and roses near the window. When they bloomed, the scent reminded me of Antonio. The first time he told me he loved me, under a tree that smelled just like this. At night, I often sat by the fire with their little daughter, Lucia. She would braid my hair clumsily and ask questions only a child could ask. "Abuela, if people die, where do they go?" I'd hold her tiny hands and say, "They go wherever they are loved the most." And somehow, saying that healed something inside me. Because I realized Antonio and Luis weren't gone. They were simply somewhere love still reached them. Weeks turned into months. The pain that once weighed like an anchor began to feel lighter. I still missed my son, but it was no longer a wound. It was a memory, soft around the edges. Weeks later, nothing was different, but my hope remained. One afternoon, we sat in silence. The window was open. He held a cigarette, but didn't light it. "Maya," he said quietly, "maybe this is my life. Smoke, cough, try, fail, repeat." I wanted to tell him no, but I stayed quiet. I knew only he could write the next part of his story. Then he said something that still echoes in my mind. "When I met Arthur, I saw my future. If I don't change, I'll become him. Old, alone, and broken." But even with that fear, I couldn't stop. That night I prayed. Not for him to be perfect, but for him to find strength. Years later, I still see the boy he once was, full of life and dreams, and the man he became, trapped in his own smoke. Addiction isn't just a habit. It's a chain that wraps around the heart and mind. Liam wasn't bad. He was my brother. He was loved. but he wasn't free. Even now, I hope one day he'll look at the cigarette in his hand and say, resolute, no more. Because no matter how many times he falls, I'll still believe in him, even when he can't believe in himself. Thank you for listening to my story. If my words touched your heart, please support, like, and share. It gives me strength to tell more stories. One evening, I found myself walking by the shore again. The sky burned in orange and rose gold, the kind of sunset that makes silence holy. I carried Antonio's scarf around my neck, the same one I held that day in the airport, the same one that had absorbed my tears. As I stood there, the wind grew stronger, tossing my hair and the scarf fluttering wildly. For a moment, I thought I heard his voice. Not from heaven, not from memory, but from the place where love still speaks when the world grows quiet. He said, "You're home now, Maria." And I knew it was true. Home was not walls or names or promises. It was peace. It was belonging, even if it came from strangers who turned into family. Later that night, Clara asked, "Do you ever wish you could go back?" I thought for a long time before answering. "No," I said, "because everything I lost led me here. And here, I found everything I truly needed." Clara smiled and hugged me tight. In her warmth, I felt Antonio's protection and Luis's apology all at once. Years have passed since then. My hair is silver now, my hands softer, slower. But my heart beats steady. Not with regret, but with quiet gratitude. Lucia is a grown woman. She calls every day, and when she visits, she brings me flowers from her own garden. "Abuela, I planted these because you taught me that love grows anywhere it's watered." And I realize, the story I thought ended in betrayal actually bloomed into legacy. Sometimes life writes its apologies not in words, but in the people it sends to heal us. When I sit by the window now, I no longer wait for messages that never come. I simply watch the sea and whisper, "Thank you for taking me the long way home." The waves crash softly below. The candle flickers on my table. And for the first time in a very long time, I am not waiting. I am living. Because not every story ends in forgiveness. Some end in understanding. And sometimes, that's even more beautiful. She was left with nothing. Yet somehow, life gave her everything she truly needed.